Good Monday morning. It's August 31st, 2020. I'm Guy McPherson of GuyMcPherson.com. That's Nature Bats Last. I'm here with my anonymous friend who's wearing a mask under his mask. You almost never see that, especially among puppets. A little bit of a series of headlines, mostly from yesterday and the day before, after the stock markets closed in the United States, and then an indication of where the stock markets are headed at the open in the United States this morning. Okay, start with Market Watch. Dow ends Friday around 3% off record closing high. Stock market is on track for best August in 36 years, and the Dow was barely below its record high, and the other two major indices in the United States exceeded their previous record highs for the close. This is due, no doubt, in part because we have headlines such as this one from MSN's MoneyWise: why Warren Buffett would advise you to refinance your mortgage. So there's a lot of chatter about refinancing mortgages. The primary reason that I do these videos, that we produce these videos, is because we're trying to verify the link between industrial activity and the stock market. If there's a direct link, and it's a linear link between industrial activity and the stock market, then as little as a 20% decline in the stock market is associated with a 20% decline in industrial activity, which is sufficient to trigger an abrupt global average rise in temperature. 1 degree, which would be more than enough to cause the extinction of humans and therefore all life on Earth. So a lot of distraction, a lot of talk of the stock market going up. The stock markets continue to rise. It seems to be unstoppable. Warren Buffett is quoted about why you should refinance your mortgage, and here's what actually matters in the world from CNBC. Also over the weekend, coronavirus cases surpassed 25 million as pandemic strains nations around the world. 25 million cases as pandemic strains nations around the world. Meanwhile, on the industrial front, the industrial economy front, as a result of the coronavirus, from NPR, mayors of college towns brace for the economic impact of remote learning. If you don't have a bunch of college students showing up on college campuses, driving around consuming gasoline and diesel, and showing up on campus and going to the theater, eating at the restaurants, bowling in the bowling alleys, participating in the video game archives, on and on and on, not to mention staying in the dormitories, if all that is greatly reduced, then to me that translates to a profound decrease in industrial activity, something that we ought to be concerned about. As another indicator, this from Reuters: United Airlines bids farewell to change fees in push for bookings. The airlines are growing increasingly desperate, despite the fact that they get bailed out by the federal government every year or two because they're constantly on the verge of going bankrupt. Now United Airlines is saying bye-bye to change fees. You can change your booking anytime, just as Southwest has been doing for years, trying to increase the number of people who are using United Airlines. From Yahoo Finance: Coke, American Air, MGM. Big companies unleash pink slips as coronavirus reshapes global economy. So we have a pandemic. It is reshaping the global economy. That's just, to put it mildly, even without the coronavirus, the United States was on track for reduced economic and industrial activity exceeding that of the Great Depression of the late 1920s and through the mid-1930s. So it's a profoundly disturbing time from an economic standpoint, and whether that translates to reduced industrial activity and therefore loss of aerosol masking is the point of my recent work, and a matter of considerable interest, shall we say, to me and almost no other people interested in studying the relationship between climate change and extinction of humans and other organisms. So, to reiterate, Coke, American Air, and MGM are unleashing pink slips instead of responding as if we're in planetary hospice. Instead of acting with compassion, decency, respect, and honesty, we're just treating people like they're garbage and throwing them away. This is the standard model for American-style capitalism, and it shouldn't come as a big surprise. And yet, it seems to be accelerating as we near the end. From Barron's, Zoom Video, H&R Block, Campbell Soup, and other stocks for investors to watch this week. So we continue to play the game, despite the fact that from the Independent 2 days ago, huge explosion leaves crater 165 feet deep in Arctic tundra following record hot summer. Record hot summer, an enormous blast, the biggest one of its kind so far in the area known as Yamal, Y-A-M-A-L, in Russia, indicating extreme methane release sufficient to cast boulders and soil quite some distance from the crater that results. And instead, what are people talking about? Whether you should refinance your mortgage. And as a consequence, the stock markets seem to be wavering a bit this morning, or probably as no consequence of what's going on in the actual news, because the news is quite mixed, although it all points toward human extinction in the not too distant future as a result of methane bursts and reduced industrial activity, loss of aerosol masking, and 27 other things I could name and already have at GuyMcPherson.com. So what's happening in the stock markets? At the open this morning, the Dow Jones is down 130, the NASDAQ is up, continuing its record rise, and the S&P 500 is little changed at the open. So there you have it. Again, a seeming lack of correspondence between what's actually going on in the world and how the stock markets are responding. Are they manipulated at an incredibly high level? Is it the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time? If it's the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time, which I suspect it is, well, we know what happens to Ponzi schemes, don't we? They implode. Is it being manipulated? If it is, how long can that be maintained? If there's a relationship between industrial activity and what's going on in the stock markets, then all of us should be paying attention to industrial activity and its obvious outcomes, including our imminent demise. Sorry to be the one to say that, but that's the way I read it.